Hi everyone, this is Dan, and this is the new Teen Titans number 26. This is the first video in my series of videos covering the Judas Contract, which is quite possibly the most famous story in the new Teen Titans of the 80s. So I've done several videos on the new Teen Titans. Again, kind of repeating, this early run is written by Marv Wolfman, drawn by George Perez, inked by Romeo Tangal, lettered by Ben Oda. Adrian Roy is the colorist, edited by Len Wein, which again, a famous name on both the Marvel and the DC side. Len Wein is actually the co-creator of Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler, and trying to remember the other two characters that were in Giant Size X-Men. But eventually he bounced over to DC, had a great career at DC as a writer-editor. Anyhow, this issue actually isn't all that related to the Judas Contract, except in one specific part. It's not a self-contained issue. You will have to pick up 27 to kind of see the conclusion of this story. But it is an excellent example of the new Teen Titans and what they were about back in the 80s. So we open up, and this issue occurs after the Space Odyssey arc involving Starfire, Coriander, and her sister. They've just concluded that conflict, and the new Teen Titans are in space heading back to Earth. So you got Cyborg and Kid Flash talking up, and they're both talking about Coriander, Starfire, and Dick Grayson, Robin. So these two have become a lot closer after the Space Odyssey arc. They have been dating on and off throughout the new Teen Titans up to this issue. But the first couple pages are kind of dedicated to them sort of reigniting that romantic flame between them and restarting their relationship. Interesting note, I forget where the interview was. I don't know if it was Dan DiDio or someone else being interviewed from DC Comics. But what was very interesting to mention was that Dick Grayson, Robin, original Robin, I should say, is extraordinarily popular among female comic book readers. And my theory as to why that's so is, he's always been kind of drawn in a very attractive manner to the female eye. And also he, within at least the books that I've read, he's constantly kind of jumping around within relationships with other characters in the DC universe. So his stories tend to be a little bit on the soap opera side for me. I'm not saying, I've only read, I would say, a select few stories with Dick Grayson. So I'm not saying that all the stories are like that. But they tend to be the kind of stories that I think would appeal to both guys and girls. So I'm not surprised by that at all. Anyhow, Marv Wolfman breaks up the issue into a bunch of cutscenes. So we go to Turkey, where a drug bust is getting broken up, and then we get a bunch of different youths. This one's in Minnesota, explaining to his sibling why he's going to New York. This youth is in New York, and he's going to go find some work on the streets and break away from his parents. And then this young girl from Illinois basically has made some not so great decisions, and her father has decided to not be much of a father, kind of a dickhead in this particular breakaway. We break again to another scene, the Teen Titans. These two pages are basically the Teen Titans returning to Earth and being very happy to be back on Earth, some of them a little too happy to be back on Earth. And everyone kind of breaks off and goes their own way to have sort of personal time. And this is kind of an interesting thing that the new Teen Titans did that was different than the Uncanny X-Men. Marv Wolfman made sure to spend a lot of time on the personal lives of all the Teen Titans. And Claremont did that too on the X-Men, but I don't think they kind of approached it differently. And if you read through the two series, you can kind of see the differences between the two. So they go their own way to go have fun personal time. And we break into the primary story right here, which is the Runaways story. Coriander, Starfire, and Dick Grayson Robin are going out in the town to have a date. They run into Adrian Chase, who's the DA, and what occurs is essentially a stick-up by this drug addict on Adrian Chase. The DA is able to defend himself, and the drug addict tries to run away, ends up getting himself killed. And it kind of sets off the mood that something is not right in the city with the youth. And you find out that this young kid means something to another character later on in the story, but I'm not going to necessarily reveal all that now. You'll have to pick up the next issue, which won't be in this video series, but I'll probably come back and revisit it later. This next couple pages are really what matters in terms of the relationship to the Judas Contract. We run into Changeling, and he gets a call for some sort of issue that the police have at the Statue of Liberty. And he runs into this young girl who is trying to destroy the Statue of Liberty. And when he goes to confront her, she's clearly under duress and very stressed out. And seeing a Teen Titan, she decides to run away. And it's revealed her powers, which are her ability to manipulate Earth. And this is the introduction of the character Terra, who is extraordinarily important to the Judas Contract, as you will see later through many videos that I'm going to have to do to kind of get to that point. But she's able to use her Earth powers to escape Changeling and kind of run away. I always thought it was very interesting that Changeling kind of like, I ran out of energy and I had to give up right here. Changeling is a character whose power is like wildly, up and down throughout this series. Like, sometimes he's like almost as good as the other Titans, and other times he's kind of a joke. At least in my, going through this whole series. I like the character, though sometimes Marv Wolfman can be a little bit overboard with writing him. He's the comedic relief for those of you who don't read the new Teen Titans. Or haven't read it, I guess I should say. This is an old series. We join another scene, and this is Raven. She's decided to kind of hang out with her classmates, and immediately regretting hanging out with her classmates, as Raven is a bit of an introvert. And she picks up a feel, God, I can't pronounce anything today, from this girl across the street, and she finds out she's in trouble. She gets help from Cyborg to give her some food and a place to stay, and she's actually working the streets as a whore, and this is very mature topics by Marv Wolfman that we're going over here, and very indicative of the Teen Titans in general. The Teen Titans go over a lot of really mature topics for an 80s book that's marketed to kids under the Comics Code Authority. Not to say that the other books of this time didn't also try to tackle these kind of issues, but the Teen Titans were a little more, I would say, open about tackling them compared to, say, a lot of the rival Marvel books across town in New York. So they take her over to a runaway center to get her some help, and this youth is kind of tailing them while they're doing it. At that runaway center, they find out from Adrian Chase that New York City's finest kind of need help from the Teen Titans. And the youth decides he's gotten enough information telling him to go out and enact his revenge, as Marv Wolfman is kind of alluding to here. And the lady at the runaway center explains a lot of the situations, as well as Adrian Chase explaining the drug problems and the crime problems and the runaway problems in New York City. And we go over to a separate scene, and that youth is now spying on a drug king. And but he gets ratted out by this character who was introduced earlier as one of the other runaway youths. This one, a New York native. He rats him out, and the gangsters are able to run down this kid. Back over with Adrian Chase and the Teen Titans, he's kind of explaining to him what he wants them to do, and the Titans are a little bit suspicious and weary of Adrian because he's kind of sounding a little bit not like a district attorney. And Robin even compares him to Batman to a degree in this panel right here. But the Titans decide, we gotta still help these kids, so let's get together and talk about how we're gonna do this. And as they're heading back to Cyborg's apartment, Raven senses someone in pain, and they break in and find the kid previously who got caught by the gangsters, beaten half to death right here. And that's the end of the issue. So what is kind of interesting when I go through this, and again, the important part that you need to know as far as the Judas Contract is the introduction of this character, Terra, who becomes a lot more important later on. But this book is very indicative of the stories that the new Teen Titans were all about. It was essentially a team superhero book that tackled a lot of deep and dark issues of the time in the 80s. There's also a lot of upbeat and fun issues too, and Marv Wolfman mixed it up really well. Also, a lot of big ideas. The Titans were going into space and other stuff. Very similar and kind of shadowing the Uncanny X-Men of this era. Though I will say this, the interpersonal relationships of the Titans are a lot more complicated than the Uncanny X-Men. But I would say that the Uncanny X-Men would probably be... They were a little more nuanced in their relationships than the Titans. The Titans are a little more just straight up soap opera in their structure, right? Anyhow, that's the video. Important thing, the introduction of Terra. Remember that. We'll get to that later in this series. If you like this video, oh, by the way, this is the new Teen Titans collection number 4. These trade paperbacks, by the way, by DC Comics are excellent. I love this uncoated paper stock. It works really well with classic comic book coloring. But anyhow, that's the video. Let me know what you think. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications. You got any comments on the new Teen Titans number 26? Leave it down below, and I will see you next time.